Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey everybody, we want to welcome you back to the next episode of the Life Success Legacy Podcast. My name is Chris Bay, and we're super glad that you're here joining us. I got two mics. I got a Mike Kwong down in Houston, Texas, Houston, America, and Michael Crawford here in Lawrence, Kansas. How are you, gentlemen?
Doing well.
Excellent. So to start off, before we say what the topic is for this, although people will read it when they click on it, Crawford will have some catchy phrase or title for the podcast.
We'll see.
Let's just brainstorm. Imagine that it's a Monday morning or lunchtime or whatever, and people are at their offices, their place of business. They're hanging out in the staff room, around the water cooler, wherever it is that people gather, things that we don't have, right? Because we don't have an office and we miss out on that. That's why our meetings tend to go longer, because we still want to socialize. But when people are just kind of in their work environment and they're having those hallway chit chats and things, what do you think the type of conversations are that they have? What do you imagine those conversations are about? What are the topics that come up?
Weather.
The weekend,
The weekend.
Yeah.
What'd you do this week? Hey, did you have a good weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, what'd you do? Right?
Yeah.
The sports
Okay.
game.
Sports ball.
Yeah.
Sports ball. Hey, what'd you think about the Jayhawks or, Houston, right?
Cougars.
The Cougars, that's right. Shout out to Toby out there, Tobias Whitman. I got my report from Tobias on the team down in Houston.
Always on it.
So how was the weekend? What plans do you have coming up? How the game went over the weekend, whatever the game was. Did you watch the Dodgers win the World Series? How about those Chiefs? Whatever it might be. Other topics that you think come up.
Well, the big R word.
The big R word.
Yeah.
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 And we're speaking of retirement.
I don't know what R word people are thinking of right now, but we're talking about retirement.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and this is being recorded in early November, and I've never had to go through it, but I've helped Mary for 20 plus years figure out her open enrollment roughly every November for 20 years, and answering all the questions. And one of my favorite things she asks me every year, still to this day, literally 2 days ago, is when they ask me about my 401k, I say we don't participate, right? And I was like, yes, same answer as the last 10 years.
Yep. So just so you know what it looks like, and Mike Kwong has probably had that experience, both being in education and our background. They pull all the teachers and administrators into a huge room. They've got some talking head up front, and they're talking about all the plans and the options, and teachers don't want to be there.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just like, I have to do this and check the box. And there's, I would say, a lack of education or lack of interest, or somewhere those two meet. But but it happens every year, all across our country.
And one thing I've noticed is there's a push just here. This is the best deal. Just everyone else is doing it this way.
Yep.
And everyone's looking at each other like, what did you put? What did you put?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
I'm like, this is your future for your family, right? You might want to, understand it a little bit, but I mean, that's just not the process in my experience. It was just kind of, let's get through.
And that window is usually pretty short.
That's right.
So you've got to make decisions quickly. And even if you really did want to do some education, I mean, there has to be some planning and things involved. And for us in education, it's not a 401k, it's a 403b. And are you going to contribute? And are you going to have, money withdrawn from your account and all those kinds of things? And that leads towards your someday retirement. And that's kind of what we want to talk about, is the concept of retirement where does that come from historically? Who made it up? Where did it come from, right?
Yep.
What it has evolved into over time, and then approaches mindset, which, right, Nelson Nash's principle, rethink your thinking. What are mindsets around retirement? What did Nelson say about retirement, right? And then maybe even us talking about like how we view retirement and what our plans are with that. So historically, back in the late 1800s, it actually goes back to Germany. And the chancellor of Germany at the time, Europe was being threatened by socialists, Marxists, etc., to take over Europe. And so the chancellor of Germany's idea was, okay, these socialists are, they're trying to push these ideas. What's a way that we can take care of people in their old age? Because one of the issues was poverty for people in their later years. And so what he came up with was basically an old age pension, is what it's described as. And what he chose was age 70. So anyone in Germany at the age of 70 would receive a pension from the government. And that was to reduce that old age poverty, right? Interestingly enough, Chancellor's not a dumb guy, right? Penicillin had not been invented yet.
Yep.
And so the vast majority of people weren't making it even into their 60s, much less their 70s. So he knew that it was never going to pay out, right? It was just Crawford. He was just throwing something out there to like, it was a gesture to kind of get the favor of the people.
To appease them, yeah.
Yep, just to appease them. So that's kind of where it started. And then over time, then in the United States, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, in 1935, put the Social Security Act into law.
Yep.
And basically took that same idea and brought it to the United States. Okay. And it was funded, and it was supposed to be a short-term project.
Yep.
That was in 1935. So we're coming up on, 90 years, if my math's right.
Yeah.
I don't know if 90 years is a short-term project, but that's where we are today. But that was the idea. So Social Security. Now, that has evolved even because people do 401ks, which was originally kind of an addition that they could add on their own on top of pensions that they received from companies. But what happened is there was a law tied in that allowed companies to shift that responsibility from them paying out a pension to the actual individual worker.
Yep.
And so then we saw this transition to 401ks becoming the big retirement plan, right? And the burden came on the actual individual worker.
Right, and that was an economic shift from major corporations.
Huge.
Because they started to realize that it was affecting their bottom dollar, and of course, greed always rules. And so they decided to, hey, what if we start slowly transitioning, and we proposition this as a win for the employee because they get to manage it themselves and they can control their own destiny. So again, another, hey, we're doing you a favor by allowing you to manage this yourself instead of providing it for you during your retirement or after you've worked so many years with us. So they slyly shifted the burden from themselves to the employee and then made it a taxable event through government rewriting of the tax code.
Yeah.
Which is just a hilarious transition to me.
Yeah. So in our day-to-day life, around the water coolers, et cetera, people talk about retirement all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, retirement used to mean being taken out of service. It means like you weren't able to contribute anymore. And then it has transitioned to this idea of, okay, you have worked all these years, you set aside money, now you get to rest, recreate, whatever those things are. Some people use it as an opportunity to refocus their life and do the things that they've always dreamed of doing, right?
Yep.
Whether that's volunteering or starting a business or whatever it is that they want to do. So it can look a lot of different ways. One of the things, if you read literature research around retirement, is what we see is when people don't have purpose. When they lose purpose in their life, what happens is they go downhill. Their health, we see it all the time. Their
Yeah.
health goes down, right?
Yep.
They lose engagement. Blue Zones research talks about, they call it the mother-in-law concept. And that is where the older generation is involved in the family, helping with the grandkids, et cetera, right? They're a part of the life. That happens in many cultures.
Absolutely. Even, in the military, I mean, I'd seen, so many cases where, you'd have master chiefs or, the commanders, coming out of retirement, fit for duty, for 30 years, 20 years at least, obviously, right? And then not a year later, they just drop dead. And it's just like you get, like you said, there's that connection, that purpose, all of these things that are way beyond what, a blood test can measure, so
It's part of the human experience is we want to have a reason to get up in the morning.
that's it.
Right. And we
Yeah.
want to make our little dent on the world. We want to make a difference.
Yep.
We want to contribute, use our gifts, our talents, etc. So Nelson Nash, the godfather of IBC, author of Becoming Your Own Banker, he said he was taking retirement out of his vocabulary.
Yeah.
And the guy was still teaching in his mid 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, they would walk him up there, put him in front of a microphone, and he was still teaching wisdom and sharing with us. And I feel fortunate and blessed that I got to engage with Nelson in those later years of his life, on the heels of, on the coattails of Mike Everett.
Yeah.
So Nelson took retirement out of his vocabulary. And it was because he still wanted to make a difference. He still wanted to contribute. Now, he did say, but I'm not opposed to passive income. Okay. So let's transition this conversation. So first of all, that whole idea, and we talk a lot about this with our clients, is somebody says, oh, what's, in their dream conversation, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And they're like, man, I want to retire. I want to be done. We're like, okay, describe for us what retirement looks like for you. Okay. Because if they don't have purpose, they aren't sharing their gifts in those things. We give them the warning that here's what we see. So then people, whether you want to play golf, start a business, whatever that looks like for you, what is your means for doing that? What is the strategy? What is the approach?
Yeah.
And there's at least two primary approaches to retirement or building that ability to have that freedom. One is the 401k model, right? And we'll get into that and what that's called. And then the other one is where you buy assets that then pay you on a regular basis. So Mike Kwong, I'm going to jump to you. Can you, in your best teacher abilities, kind of lay out these two approaches that people take to retirement?
I would even break it down further to, it's almost like two different mindsets or contexts of thinking about, money and your income, right? Some call it the accumulation mindset, right? That would be the 401k model, IRAs. You're kind of squirreling away whatever excess money, right? Because everyone has excess money every month towards that nest egg, right? That mythical nest egg number. It used to be $1 million. $1 million doesn't go as far as it used to, as we know, right? So now it's like 2 million or so, and that's the accumulation mindset. You're doing that kind of on the regular, right? The other way, that brings to mind the bad dad joke of, how do you eat an elephant? You guys know this?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you?
I use it all the time.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, right? So that's the cash flow mindset, I would say, or with passive income, right? And instead of having this mythical number that's always so, crazy to reach, that people after 10, 15 years realize I'm nowhere close to that magic number for the nest egg. It's a lot easier to break down that, instead of that 30-year window, 20-year, whatever it is, into a monthly. Let's look at what we can do monthly. If you can add $50, $100 a month of extra income, or passive income would be best. Now you can start, building up to that in a much more realistic and reasonable, fashion. Like
So a typical model of that, people are familiar with real estate, right? And
Sure.
so they might take a loan to leverage and they buy a property in some form,
There you go.
a duplex, fourplex, whatever. And then that rent that they receive helps them pay off that mortgage,
Correct.
right? That they took, that loan that they took, with the idea that eventually maybe that mortgage gets paid off and then that just pockets into their money. Or as they build that equity in that first property, they then can leverage that to start a second property. It takes some capital to do that, though, right?
Yeah, it certainly does. If you're talking real estate, that's the one challenge. There's the bars of entry, and even getting into one unit, or like a condo or a single family, that's a significant, down payment you'd have to kind of save up for normally, and then you'd have to have good credit, to go to the bank for the mortgage on that, and then you're waiting and, well, hopefully getting a good tenant that can at least cover that mortgage, having a positive income stream, balance each month to net you something, as passive income. So it's not the only way, certainly, but that's what springs to mind for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right?
So Mike Crawford, Mary asks you again every year. So I tell them we don't participate in my 401k.
Yeah.
So back to the accumulation model, just very simply said, the accumulation model is about building up this nest egg, right? And then you get to a certain point where you can then live off of a percentage of that.
Yeah.
And hopefully you don't outlive that money.
Right.
Right.
So they sometimes call it the Monaco, model, where essentially you can take about 3 or 4% of whatever that nest egg is, to live off of per year, right? If you think about 4%, that would divide out to 25 years, roughly. If someone retires at 65, they hope to live to maybe, 80. Okay, that makes sense. So if you reverse calculate that, right, of $1 million, 4% is only $40,000.
Yeah.
So that's a very, we're not talking living lavishly, we're just talking enough to get by and to not have to eat cat food, in your golden years, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's the Monaco model, where you kind of reverse engineer your nest egg number based on what your, monthly or annual, requirements are.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's the most interesting about that, I don't have a lot of experience, basically none, of ever working in a space where we really had a ton of like benefits. Like my shop, when I had the shop, we offered like a small retirement type plan, but it was like, it was through Edward Jones, and guy would come in and do all the things you guys just talked about. And I was the youngest, and most of the guys that I had in my shop were, twice my age, and, partially at a different phase of life than me at the time, as, in my mid 20s or whatever, just trying to figure out life. And I said this in one of our most recent podcasts. It was like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to take advantage of this free money that my company was offering to match my 401k. And so I was living close to the bone already, and I'm putting in this extra because that's the right thing to do, and after the '08 market crash, we all hurt. And so I think everybody's feeling at the time was, oh, this is just, everybody's going through it, just deal with it. And I rearranged all of my numbers, and I started being more aggressive, and I thought, okay, I'm young, I'm still going to do this. This is how this is going to work. And in 2014, late 2014, when I met Mike Everett, and I was rebuilding their website, the Life Success Legacy website, and kind of reading through the material, I was like, This makes a lot more sense than what I've been doing because I've been rebuilding since '08. And
Yeah.
I'm barely back to where I was, and I'm dumping as much as I can afford into this thing. And I'm meeting with my guy once a quarter, and like we have these strategies and all this stuff. And it's like, I understand the tortoise and the hare, sometimes it takes time, but good Lord, I mean, the tortoise was going backwards and we weren't making any traction. And so that's when I made that mental switch and the light bulb came on for me. And I was like, there is a better way.
And as we've met with potential clients, prospects over the years, I've seen a shift. I don't know if you guys have seen this too, but those who come from that accumulation model, they kind of like the idea of, look, it's just pulled out of my paycheck. I don't have to worry about it. It just goes someplace. Somebody else is managing it, and cross your fingers and hope it works out. What I've seen is people have said, okay, wait a second, that 401k thing, okay, I'm going to have to pay taxes on that in the future. And I have no idea what the tax rate's going to be in the future.
Yep.
And so what I've seen people do is shift to Roths, IRAs,
Yep.
because those dollars are getting taxed before they go in, very similar to an IBC policy. And I love the conversation with people about, so tell me, what are the attributes of a Roth that you really like? Because when you line those up next to an IBC policy, they're very similar, but IBC's got even more benefits to it, right? In my opinion, more guarantees, death benefit, you can borrow against it. It's not tied to the tax qualified plan and all the tax laws and all that. And so it's an easier jump mind shift wise from that Roth to an IBC policy. Mike Kwong, though, when we talk about, I want to make this kind of gradual transition from the accumulation model to passive income. Accumulation model right now out there is the 401k, right?
Yep. Sure.
Make a case for IBC, a policy being actually a good place for the accumulation model, if that's the approach you want to take.
Sure. I mean, Nelson had his last book, I think it was The Warehouse of Wealth, right? Just the title should give you an idea. He's talking about an IBC policy or system of policies, right? And if you're a fan of that, there's nothing wrong with accumulating wealth, obviously, right? But even among the 401k or an IBC policy, they grow differently. The means through which they accumulate that wealth is just built different. Like you said, there's all these other advantages aside from the interest rate or the growth, the death benefit. That is huge, right? Because nobody lives forever. Just to start with that, think about that contract that a policy is.
Yep.
In the worst case, you die the first week, you open a policy. Well, bingo, you get 25 times whatever you paid into it. That doesn't happen.
Your survivors do.
Well, your survivors do. Sorry, of course.
That's good.
But even, as you, pay into it and as it grows, that proposition never reverses, right? There's no risk of it. You're always going to, your family at least will always have more than you've ever paid into it. So let's get that straight. So there's no risk there, is my point, right? And then the cash values, the way they grow, people obsess over the rate of return and things like that, but it literally is built to grow every single year, which you cannot say for any 401k or IRA type of security. And then they grow, tax-free, and they compound upon that growth. So it's a fantastic place to accumulate your wealth, even if that's what your goal is. There's no way that, and we've been invested in real estate businesses. I've been in stock market, mutual funds. I've done dividend, reinvestment plans. I trade options, all of those things. There's just, you talk about an easy button, right? In that sense, with IBC, at minimum, there's once a year that you pay your premium. And if you do nothing besides that, okay, it's going to work fantastically for you. Your cash values will accumulate, but the death benefit does as well. And that is just extra, dry powder for whatever else you want to do, right? Which is great, because once your money is in, say, that 401k, it's spoken for, right? It's being invested. It's doing what it has to do, or hopefully does. You don't have that limitation with your policies. As that cash value grows, all the while it's growing growing, you have access to all these dollars again,
Yep.
right? That you can then put, to either pay off debt or to build, rental portfolio, or if you want to invest in your business. Okay, there's all kinds of synergies that you can employ with that.
So the flexibility and the ownership of it, because life insurance predates the tax law, it's not tied into those tax qualified plans. So you don't have all the rules and limitations that happen with that. So it gives you a lot of control. One of the things that I most appreciate is the guarantees. Because, like many of us, 2008, man, we watched people's 401ks and 403bs just get hammered.
Yeah.
And we didn't see that with our life insurance policies.
No, these policies, right? The ones that we prefer to work with are all over a century old, well more than that. And and they've been paying dividends through that, time of the Great Depression.
Every year, even in the Great Depression.
World War II, all the worst stuff, the 70s crisis, So, I mean, they know what they're doing, And you talk about the hare, or the tortoise. I mean, this is a bulletproof tortoise, I mean, it's withstood bomb blasts.
So somebody said, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that like ties back to all of this to me is we've said it before, is like luck, liquidity, use, and control. Those are three aspects of a properly designed whole life insurance policy that you really truly cannot find in all three combinations. Usually, you see those diagrams, it's like, here are three items, you get to pick two, because there's no way that all three will work, right? Like, so, do you want liquidity and use, but no control? But in properly designed whole life insurance policy, you get all three. And they only just get better every year, and that liquidity, use, and control continue to grow with it. It's just, to me, it's almost magical. And I know that Mike Everett used to say this, and I think you hated it, Chris, when he did this back in the day, back in January of 2015, my first boot camp. He would say all the time, and now it sounds too good to be true, right?
Oh,
he would just
so
all
salesy.
The time. It is just too good to be true. And I know it's his being goofy but it was probably something he thought about too, right? Like, he was like, there's just no way. Like, how can it really, truly? And it's just the thing that Nelson really uncovered for us was taking advantage of the tools that are at our disposal via these different companies that are willing to work with us to design policies that work for everyone. And I think that that's what's amazing.
So like a 401k, that accumulation model, let's say I started contributing money in my early 20s when I first started teaching into an IBC policy instead of my 403b, right? And I just accumulated over 40, 50 years, whatever that time frame is. And I just kept dumping money into my IBC system of policies. And I'm like, I'm doing the accumulation model. Here's the great thing. Not only is it just an accumulation model for that nest egg, it also is an ever increasing line of credit that I have access to. So if I also want to incorporate purchasing assets to start developing passive income, I can also do that with my IBC policy. And so I actually have options there between the two of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would argue there's no better simple interest, leverage source, of capital that you can rely on that only increases every year than a properly structured IBC policy to do that with.
Gives me chills.
It says a lot about us, doesn't it?
Oh,
We're
man.
a bunch of nerds.
We are so cool.
So if somebody says, okay, I get the idea of the accumulation model. I see what I've been doing with my 401k, 403b, Roth, those kinds of things. I see that a properly structured whole life insurance policy for IBC is an option for that. And I also see that could be used for a line of credit that I own and control that I then can use to purchase assets. So what are some of those things that we see clients do when they use their policy as a line of credit to start developing that passive income, because Mike Kwong, as we mentioned earlier, real estate takes some capital,
Yeah.
right? That takes some upfront capital to get that thing going. So that is a possibility, but are there other entry points that people can do?
Yeah, I mean, one obvious one, and this is, like goes back to Nelson's, example of if you have a leaky bathtub, right, and you're having leaks flowing out all the time, no matter how you keep refilling it, those leaks are gonna, take away from your progress.
Yeah.
So you can leverage a policy to pay off debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Buy out your own debt, right? Whether it's pay off your credit cards early or your mortgage, you save all that interest and redirect that, right? Monthly
Be an
payments.
honest banker,
Be an honest
turn the
banker.
wind current on your
Turn
debt from a
policy.
headwind to a tailwind that we talk
Same
about
thing
all
as
the
we've
time in our
always
boot
been talking
camps.
about. Absolutely. So that's great. Another third option, right, would be to start investing in, passive income streams with, structured notes. Okay. You can leverage right here, dibs,
I was going to
right?
say there's some gold
So
letters up there. What's this dibs thing up there?
somebody, yeah,
For shameless plugs,
there
Love
you
right?
go.
it.
Mike Kwong's book, Dibs on Your Money. If you are interested in just general financial literacy in
Hmm.
general, but also about how IBC and this income stacking concept can come together for passive income, that's
That's
where he's getting ready to talk about right now.
Yep.
absolutely. So in a nutshell, if you're at that point where you have some, monies, free monies each month available as, say, a positive cash flow contribution towards, this system, right? Then you can take that and in conjunction with the awesome simple interest line of credit that you have through a policy, putting those two together and start building out, passive income stacks, we call it, right?
Hmm.
At 36 months at a time, and it just starts layering and building quickly over time.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, in our first just over 2 years, we were able to, essentially replace, one of our teacher pays with that
Yeah.
passive.
Yeah.
Passively, that's the difference. Not working a second or third job to get more money. That's the old way of thinking. When you, leverage these powerful forces, it's really
Hmm.
velocity banking on steroids, but you're
Yeah.
just using it in a very strategic fashion to build this passive income over time, but it compounds very quickly. So,
Do you see the combination? I know you've said this before, but I think it's important to repeat. Do you see the combination of an infinite banking policy and the idea of the passive income, you know, stacking, as as we call it, as like kind of the combining of two forces, right? Like it is a, how would you describe that?
sure, sure. So we talked about, or before, the accumulation model or thinking of the cash flow model, right? And they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Hmm.
Okay. I prefer thinking, in a shorter term basis where I can get, real results quickly, right? That's that cash flow model. But
Hmm.
you have the perfect asset to accumulate wealth through anyways, through a policy. Now, if you have the right, training, education, we can leverage these ever increasing cash values to start building this passive income stream on a monthly basis.
Yep.
And it might be just $100 a month in the beginning, but quickly that can triple, 10x and start building really quickly, all out of this secure base of capital that's your
Hmm.
policy. Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's so much flexibility in it. And obviously we're more inclined to go with the passive income approach. When we talk about what IBC does, we start and spend a lot of time with most clients, majority of them, on number one, which is eliminating outside debt, because that's where most people come to us with, is they've got credit card debt, car loans, student loans, mortgages, et cetera, business loans. And oftentimes they tell us, I want to get rid of that debt. Okay. So that's where we oftentimes start. Two, Mike Crawford or Mike Kwong actually referenced this earlier, is building your warehouse of wealth. So that really is the accumulation model. It's building up capital inside a system that you own and control and have full flexibility to use how you want. So that's the second thing. I can use that for family banking. I can use that to finance purchases. I can use it for fun vacations, anything that I want to do. I can also use it for the third option. Remember, number two was building your warehouse of wealth. That's really the accumulation of
Yep.
wealth. But I can leverage that line of credit to do number three, which is passive income. And you're only limited by your imagination when it comes to that.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many options out there. And we have inside our community unbelievably lit up
Dozens.
people that are sharing ideas and collaborating and really going to town on that.
Yeah.
And then the little known one, at the end that we always kind of forget about, don't really focus on, but it's important to a lot of us. And that's the legacy. That is the tax-free wealth transfer in the
Yeah.
form of a death benefit, right? But if I develop my passive income, talk about this a little bit. We don't talk about this much. I'm putting you on the spot, Kwong. Let's talk about legacy as it applies to uh, income stacking.
Sure.
Right? So think about our kids, right? Our kids are in their 20s ish, right?
Yep.
And if I have developed my income stacking model over time and I built it up where if I need that passive income, I can use it. But what can happen for future generations with that income stacking model?
Simply put, they can inherit it, right? And without missing a beat, once it's built up a certain momentum and capacity of, cash flows, it perpetuates and continues on for them, right? And again, all it's just knowing how to manage it, right? And to continue. And as long as you have that system of, policies for leverage to continue, repeating that process of borrowing, to stack with, absolutely. You can build these systems out and have them as, passive income assets that your kids can take over, right? After we're gone. It's like a factory.
Just like real estate or anything else.
that's
I was
right.
going to say, it's sort of like any other investment. And I know these
Here
aren't
comes the
investments, but it's like, but yeah,
Without the tenants and the headaches and the repairs and all that overhead.
exactly.
Yeah.
You eliminate and Nelson's example of the grocery store is the way I always go back to. He talks about, like, if you're going to build a grocery store, you have to have property, you have to have a building, you have to have employees, you have to have shelving and inventory. And like he goes through, and Mike Everett does this really well in the boot camps or the webinars where he talks through all those pieces. And then he goes, what if you didn't need all of that to start a new business? And each time you start a new IBC policy, you're starting a new business. If you can get your brain to click that each policy is the new business that you are continuing to capitalize, just like you would if you opened up the grocery store. And then you get to reap the benefits as long as you don't steal from yourself. Principle 3, right? Put the peas back on the shelf. And so, like, it's a mindset. But I love that our client and our community, and I think, Chris, you'll recap this at the end, but like between our IBC community, the DIBS community, our front porches, our webinars, our boot camps, like there are tons of opportunities to stay engaged and learn, because we don't even know all the ways people are utilizing their systems to advance themselves, their families, their communities. And I think that's the thing that's so great about our community, is that as we continue to grow it, it seems to like organically become more and more interesting, right? Like there's just so many more facets that I'm just like, wow, this is mind blowing. 10 years ago, I'd have never thought this.
Yeah. I love the phrase, I must hurry up and catch them for I'm their leader. Sometimes it feels like that as a member of LSL, right? Because we've lit this fire and our clients, it's like a prairie fire. They're just taking off and leaving us in the ashes,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're over here teaching this stuff and working over here. And they're like, just taking it and running with it, which is so fun. And that's what we have always dreamed of, is like, it reminds me of back in my coaching days. Like, at first you're coaching the players how to play the game, how to play the position. You're teaching, right? Then you start working on like philosophy of how to approach the game, how we want to go about scoring, those kinds of things. But then you get to a place, and I'll use like the Chiefs because I'm near Kansas City, grew up in Kansas City. You got people like Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes who are coaches on the field. And that's when the whole thing takes off, right? And that's what we've seen with our clients. It's like we've got coaches on the field that are teaching each other in our social media groups.
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes we don't even say anything. It's them teaching each other.
Yeah.
And it does. It gives me goosebumps.
Yeah,
I just
it's
love
awesome.
it. Just absolutely love it. So to our clients out there, faithful, loyal clients, thank you. We are constantly trying to hurry up and catch you.
Yeah.
MK, you had something to say?
No, it's just like, like we always say, it's not about the, destination, it's the journey, right?
Yeah.
And to that end, right, the arrival syndrome, we're always fighting it, but we'll keep learning, we're coaches, and mentors, but it's super exciting when we see the student become a master,
Yes.
that's when it's super fun and motivating for us.
Oh,
Yeah.
so cool.
All right. Well, let's just wrap up with a reminder of Nelson's principles.
Yep.
Number one, Nelson always said, think long term. That can apply whether you're doing the accumulation model or the passive income model. Okay. And if you like those more short-term returns, the passive income model gives you that kick a little bit quicker for sure. So think long terms, number one. Number two, capitalize your system generously. Again, applies with both models. Okay. Number three, don't steal from your system. Nelson always said, don't steal the peas, referring back, as Mike Crawford was saying, the grocery store model. Don't steal the peas. Be an honest banker. Have a system for repaying your system. Okay. Number four, don't do business with banks. We're not talking about savings account or checking accounts. Okay. But we're talking about creating your own privatized banking system where you don't have to actually take loans from the bank and contribute to fractional reserve banking and the whole system that creates inflation. And then the fifth one is rethink your thinking. So around this whole concept of retirement, well, if you have not really, if this is new information to you, you haven't really thought about this, we really encourage you to think about, maybe even write about or journal about, what is your vision of retirement? Maybe you want to take the approach of Nelson Nash and say, you know what, I'm taking retirement out of my vocabulary, but I'm still very open to passive income. So that's our wish for you all, that you would continue to contribute your gifts and your talents to the world, and not just get to a point where you want to pack it up and sit on the couch or play golf with all of your free time. So guys, thanks for joining. Appreciate your inputs and your comments. It's always fun having these conversations. Not ever quite sure where it's going to go, but it was fun. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. Check us out at lifesuccesslegacy.com. We have many, many podcasts going back to 2016. We have books like Mike Kwong's book, Dibs on Your Money. We've got Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. We've got Family Banking with Purpose. So if you like a narrative with no numbers or charts and just a story, that one's for you. We have a lot of great resources, and we hope you'll check them out. Learning events. If you're new to all this, we recommend you start with a webinar, and you can find that on our learning events on our website. We do boot camps, both virtual and live, and those are a deep dive, usually about 2 to 3 hours long. But we'd love to have you join us for one of our boot camps. And then for our clients that we currently have, we have our online groups, we have our monthly front porches, and we always love seeing our existing clients joining us for our boot camp. So thank you all for joining us. We look forward to engaging with you next time. And thank you again for listening in on the Life Success Legacy podcast.